Welcome to dark tales of Sydney's inner west. Tales of true crime and mystery to tantalise and terrify. Tonight's tale is the Battle of Battle Bridge. A story of a lonely road, terrifying characters and major events that shaped the colony of New South Wales. So draw in, take a comfy seat, and I'll begin. Imagine, if you will, a lonely, rutted road, weaving between overhanging trees and dense bushland. The screech of cockatoos echoes through the bush, and deep within you may hear the crack of branches breaking. An animal, perhaps a bouncing kangaroo, a lost pony, or the sound of a bush ranger. For it is the 1790s, and we are at the start of the colony of Sydney, Australia. Sydney town is becoming, but the people there are starving. Poor land and a long drought have seen crops fail, and the colony forced to rely on handouts provided by Governor Phillip, which he keeps locked away in a central building. Only a small amount of sustenance is handed out each day. Desperation grips the colony, and the governor dispatched a ship to the nearby land of Norfolk Island and upwards to Indonesia for supplies to satiate the people of Sydney. Within the colony, everyone who could farm was put to work, and the boats were dispatched up the Parramatta River to seek out and hope for fertile farmland to the west, where the surveyor some years prior had claimed to have found rich soil. Farms were established at these lands of Parramatta, some 25 kilometres west of Sydney. Animals were fattened up there, and big cartloads of produce found their way back to Sydney, first by boat along the Parramatta River, but then by the long, lonely road overhung by the leaves of eucalyptus trees. And at the mercy of the bush rangers, this road was known as the Parramatta Road. The carters and the drovers had to keep their wits about them as they slowly traversed along its rutted length, up steep slopes and down through boggy, churned up bottoms, bringing the produce back to Sydney. It was known that prisoners had escaped the colony. It was desperate times. They had sought out encampments in the bushland there around the area. One lonely inn, the Welcome Inn, along the last stretch of Parramatta Road before one enters Sydney. It must be around where Leichhardt is now. Was known as the Welcome Inn, its rusty sign swinging in the breeze. It was the last stopping place where people could get refreshed and rested before Sydney, and was the last time that some of the drovers saw their wallets. It was a place frequented by the bushrangers, where gangs appeared and disappeared into the woods, adept at hiding and even more ruthless. One other property was along this lonely stretch of the Parramatta Road in the early 1800s. Colonel George Johnston's Annandale House. A fine single-storey building with high walls and an even higher gate, and a sweeping drive of Norfolk pine trees. He was a fierce officer from the Royal Marines, sent out as a lieutenant on the First Fleet, and was handed land by Governor Phillip in thanks to his service. He called the area Annandale after his beloved Scottish place of Annan in Scotland. But even he, at night, was likely laying in bed, scared of the bushrangers who he knew patrolled the area. A scream may be heard through the dark night. Was it a whisper of wind between the Norfolk pines, or was it the whisper of trouble brewing? That was his lot, to sit in his grand house and be aware that on this lonely stretch of road and the bushland all around, there were crimes being plotted. And on one hot day in January 1808, George Johnston's bravery was put to the test. One afternoon, he heard running feet coming up his driveway, scattering gravel, panting. An officer in his red uniform, minus his hat, came rushing up the driveway and hammered on the door. George Johnston's footman answered the door. It was a call for help. Just a few hundred metres further on, a riot was underway. A chain gang was working under the supervision of the red-coated guards, building a bridge across what is now known as Hawthorne Canal, across a stream close to Taverner's Hill, a steep climb that was rutted and boggy. This chain gang had had enough of the guards and the hot conditions and the poor rations, and they were scared of being attacked by the bushrangers. So they staged a mutiny. They began picking up everything they could find on the road, all of the pebbles that were dotted around, and throwing them at their guards. It was a bloody affair. George Johnston knew what he had to do. He saddled up his steed and he rode at full tilt down his driveway, through the gates and out onto the Parramatta Road, heading down towards Taverner's Hill, towards the scene at the stream that lay before him. He pulled up next to the rowdy mob, his horse rearing up, and he raised his sword and said, "I will run through anyone who fails to obey." And so the mutiny was quashed, and George Johnston went on his way. The bridge became known as Battle Bridge, or Johnston's Leap, for the actions of the colonel that day. And the name remained even when the wooden bridge was replaced by stone in the 1870s. You can see this bridge even today as you go along the Greenway. Just look up as you cross Parramatta Road. If you like books on the dark history of Sydney's inner west, please go to www.darktales.com.au for more stories. and I will be back with another tale.